Hello makers and creators, welcome to Busy Creating Memories. Today we are going to make delicious moist rhubarb muffins. Let's get started. First you add in room temperature eggs and your buttermilk as well as cooking oil. We are going to whisk these together and you don't need to over whisk them or make it bubbly, just enough to where all the ingredients are thoroughly combined and there's no more separation between the wet ingredients. Set that aside while we work on sifting together our dry ingredients. We need this to be completely separate from the wet ingredients. Add in your flour and then bring in your granulated sugar, your brown sugar, the baking powder, and the salt. I like to use a whisk to break it all together to make sure that there's no more clumps of the brown sugar, and it slightly whisks and sifts the ingredients together. Once that is done, we're going to combine the egg mixture with the flour mixture. I like to use a whisk just to mix it together just enough to get the initial ingredients wet so that the flour doesn't fluff out and make a mess everywhere. Then I switch over to a rubber spatula and continue mixing. You don't want to overmix, otherwise you'll end up with dense muffins. Simply scrape the sides and the bottom with the spatula to make sure you get all the pockets of flour so there's no dry ingredients left. When all the dry ingredients are thoroughly mixed in, then we're going to bring in our rhubarb. You can use fresh, chopped, or frozen, and there's no need to thaw the frozen either. Then we add in the pure vanilla extract. We gently fold in the rhubarb to make sure that it is evenly distributed throughout the batter. Again, we don't want to overmix, otherwise you'll end up with dense and tough muffins. Just gently fold it in until it's evenly distributed. Once that is done, set it aside and pull out your muffin tin. You can use cooking spray or you can line each liner. It depends on the type of texture you want afterwards. And fill each tin about 2/3 to 3/4 of the way full. I overfilled mine just so you can see what happens. I'll show you later. We're going to move on to the cinnamon streusel topping, which this is completely optional, but I love the crispy, sugary texture that it does to the top. You want to just simply mix it together with a fork, and you may be wondering, is this ever going to come together? But trust me, keep going. It will, and it will give the most beautiful cinnamon crumbly texture on top of your muffins that you will adore. We will spoon about 1 teaspoon to 1 tablespoon worth of the cinnamon crumble on top of each muffin, and how much is really up to you depending on how much sugary topping you want. I usually prefer 1/2 tablespoon to a full tablespoon on mine. We bake them in the oven at 450 for about 5 minutes just to give the initial oomph to the rising, and then continue baking at 350. When you remove them, let them sit for about 2 minutes before you remove them. I like to run my knife around the edges just to make sure they don't stick. But this is what I mentioned, when you overfill, you'll get that big dome and they will be difficult to remove, and they'll be a little bit crumbly and difficult. But either way, you're still going to end up with a deliciously moist and fluffy rhubarb muffin. Thank you for watching, and make sure you check out our other videos at Busy Creating Memories.